All right, guys, thank you all so much for coming. I'm so excited to talk to you today about ChatGPT and SEO. So a little bit about myself. I started an agency with my brother Alex, and really AI in the last year has really just like revamped everything we do. We do it better, we do it faster, and I'm so into it. You know, I literally use ChatGPT all day, several times a day. One of my screen windows, I have 4 monitors in my setup, in my workspace, and one half of one of them is always ChatGPT. And I've learned so much with it, and hopefully I'll share some things today and teach you a little bit about maybe how to use it better. Okay, so a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, go through the history of ChatGPT. We'll do it fairly quickly. I'll go through some general tips, so no matter what you use ChatGPT for, hopefully some of these general tips will help you. We'll talk about ChatGPT for content generation, for SEO analysis and links. And then it's not just ChatGPT, that's not the only game out there for generative AI, so we're going to introduce some more players. And for those of you who have websites and are interested, we'll have a free backlink offer that I'll introduce at the end. But first, a show of hands, who here currently uses ChatGPT? Oh, great, mostly all of you. Who here uses ChatGPT while doing work? Raise your hand. Cool. Raise your hand now if you guys do SEO. That's either part of your job or you're in a team that does SEO. Nice. And how many of you finally do SEO and use ChatGPT for your SEO currently? Okay, so around half in the last question. So cool. It helps me kind of get a little barometer of where we are as an audience. All right, cool. So a little bit about myself. I'll keep this brief. So I started the company around 12 years ago with my brother here, Alex. We're currently around 400 employees, just under. We're based in the United States. For the last 7 years, we've been in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies. SEO is one of the core things we do. Me, myself, before I founded Smart Sites, I started Backlink Build. It was a link building company. And then later we went a little bit more full service with Smart Sites. But SEO is still at the core of what we do. We also do pay-per-click, web design, email marketing, social media. But SEO really is our core product. And for today's agenda, we're going to talk about SEO. Okay, so ChatGPT was released fairly new, at least the ChatGPT part, not necessarily OpenAI, and it was really the fastest to reach 100 million users. And if you even look at consumer products like TikTok, and Instagram, they reach 100 million users so much slower than ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is not social media. You're not going to find your friends on ChatGPT. It's a whole different product. So, just the speed it reached that much is really astonishing. However, I could say though Threads was released a little bit more recent than this graph, which is the Twitter-like replacement that was made by Meta. That reached 100 million users faster, but it was also faster to kind of take a nosedive. So, I think ChatGPT still wins it there as well. But even though ChatGPT almost seemed like an overnight sensation, it was actually worked on much slower. So OpenAI started in 2015, so it's really been around 8 years since they started, pioneering this. But really, it wasn't until ChatGPT. So before it was like you need to use APIs, not everyone could use it. But that chat interface in ChatGPT, that was really the tipping point. And then ChatGPT, there was ChatGPT 3, and then ChatGPT 4 came out, like, I don't know, it wasn't even a year in between. And then the capabilities of ChatGPT 4 compared to 3 are so much higher. And you can really tell the growth in this stuff, both with ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, is really exponential. We're really going to see this market blow up. And here you can tell, here is a graph of test scores, ChatGPT 3 compared to ChatGPT 4. Again, now we're talking about less than 1 year between ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4, and ChatGPT 4 got so much smarter than 3. And again, you're going to really see this. That's why it's so exciting. Even the stuff that's, you're not able to do now with it. If I give another talk next year, this is going to change and it's going to get so much smarter. And this stuff is really moving so fast. All right, so general tips. So first off, if you're an organization, and a lot of times I've heard people I talk about, hey Mike, yeah, actually we're looking for a ChatGPT expert. And that's really the wrong mindset. It's almost like, you have an organization, you go like, I'm gonna hire a person and he's gonna be my Googler. Like any problem we have that needs a Google search, we're gonna talk to this one guy and he's gonna be the guy that goes to Google search and actually asks Google for it. And that's really not the way you have to think about it. It really has to be that everyone in the organization should know how to use ChatGPT, just like everyone knows how to use Google. It's just like an extra tool out there. And this is a funny thing I found. They're looking for a prompt engineer and librarian. They're paying well into 6 figures for it. I hope they didn't find anyone because this is absolutely the wrong approach. Everyone in your organization needs to learn how to use this as a tool. It's not one person's job. Okay. A lot of times also when I see people use ChatGPT, they use it as a one-way conversation. They tell ChatGPT what to do and ChatGPT spits it out. And even if it was the wrong question in the beginning, that's the only way to use it. And a lot of times when I hear about frustrations about people using ChatGPT, they don't actually, use it as a two-way conversation. They ask the wrong question, they get answer to the question they asked, you talk to a human being and they go like, hey, I have this B2B business and I really want to be big on TikTok for it, and this is what I want to do. And then my social media person will say, hey, actually this is not the right audience for your product. Right? It's a two-way conversation. They're not going to do lots of work, even though they know it's wrong. And you tell ChatGPT for it, it's not going to talk back to you unless you ask it to. So, for example, in this prompt, I said I want to write an email to get people to meet me at Prague at the TES affiliate conference, right? And if I just go in there and ask, like, hey, write me this email prompt, it's going to write it, and it's going to be very wrong. It's going to take me a lot of time to edit it because it's going to make up information because you didn't give it information, right? But if you actually ask it, say, hey, what questions what things do I need to provide to you for you to write a good email? It's actually going to tell you, here, provide, answer these things, and then answer them, and it's going to do a much better job of crafting that email or whatever you use ChatGPT for. So again, remember, use it as a two-way conversation. You can literally ask it to ask you questions. Cool. One thing also, that you see people using ChatGPT a lot for, they always make new conversations, new convo. And I do that a lot of times it's fine. And by the way, sometimes it's needed, because sometimes when ChatGPT is stuck, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to open a new chat window and just start fresh, and that's the right move. But a lot of times it's actually helpful to keep using this same chat. And especially when we're going to talk about content, you're actually building this chat there, and it actually learns from your chat window. So you could give it like, here's my target audience, right? Here's my persona, here's the type of content I like, or the case is, and it's going to learn inside that chat window. So you could always come back to that chat window and it starts. But I'll tell you, ChatGPT right now doesn't really do a good job of organizing it for you. There's no like folders, right? It's just like a list of recent chats, and a lot of times I'm like, oh, where was that chat? When I have it, right? But what's really cool right now, what you could do, you could actually go there, you could press create link, and you can get a link to your chat. And the way that you could click that link, you could come back to it and you could say restart that chat. So with that link now, you could organize yourself, put that in a spreadsheet, right? Or, for example, for me, I deal with lots of clients. So I could, in a spreadsheet, I could have, here's my, this is content for this client, this is content for this client, this is this persona, etc., and just keep it organized in a spreadsheet and then just come back to it. Make sure you keep teaching it, versus starting fresh, you get much more out of it. Cool. One thing you have to also just be very aware with ChatGPT, I think it's like one of the riskiest things right now, like one of the the things that like it really hasn't cracked yet, right, is that it's really bad with facts. Really bad with facts. And this study right here is done by MIT, and it asked ChatGPT a few prompts, and one was the US presidents, and asked different prompts, like who were the US presidents between this time, and who were the US presidents that did this between this time, and it asked ChatGPT this, and it recorded, was it the right answer? Did it avoid answering the question, it says, hey, I don't know, or did it, and what they call, which I love the name, they call it hallucinating, which it would make stuff up. And a lot of times, the hallucination right here is orange. You see a lot of orange there. A lot of times, it just made stuff up, right? And sometimes, the first time I realized this, by the way, I was working with an auto dealership client. This is one of the clients we have for SEO, and I by accident typed in the wrong make and model. I typed in the make was not the right for the model was the wrong model for the car company, right? And I typed in by accident, and all of a sudden spit something out. I'm reading, I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense, right? And then I realized, oh, I would have prompted it wrong, and it would have just made stuff up. made up horsepower, it was like family friendly, or like this in the airbags. Like, where did it get this from, right? But sometimes it's kind of okay, that was my bad, I asked the wrong thing. But sometimes, again, you're asking factual information and it totally gets it wrong. So you have to be very aware of that. This is a funny one also. This one I got right from the get-go. What is 1 plus 0.9? It said 1.9 correctly. And then you go back to it, like, isn't it 1.8? And it goes, oh, sorry, my bad, it is 1.8. Right, so I got it right the first time, and then it corrected itself the wrong way. My wife's a math teacher. She says the same thing. She uses ChatGPT, helps her with her lessons plans, gets creative with it. But a few times it literally says the wrong answer, and she second guesses herself. Like, is this wrong or am I wrong? She double checks her work, and again, a lot of times ChatGPT is wrong, even when it comes to math, which is pretty black and white. The more niche the topic is, the more it will get wrong. Right here is Moroccan presidents, or political leaders rather. This is U.S. presidents. A lot more is written about U.S. presidents than Moroccan political leaders. Moroccan political leaders, it was wrong more of the time than U.S. presidents. So the more niche your topic is, the more chance it will hallucinate answers. It'll make stuff up that doesn't exist. Before I had a slide for this, it was who founded smart sites. And it was my brother and I, and it made up a sister. It was like Yana Mellon, and I'm like, who's Yana Mellon? Like, where'd you get this from? And I, scoured the internet. I'm like, did anyone ever write about this? This person does not exist. There's no Yana Mellon, and literally, it hallucinated. So keep that in mind. Okay. So why we're even talking about generative AI, ChatGPT, when it comes to SEO, and the only reason we're even talking about it is because Google said it's okay. Google actually went totally backwards on its original policy, where it's pretty specific that says we want content for humans by humans, for people by people, and it was pretty steadfast about it. So anyone using ChatGPT, using AI, well, this was pre-ChatGPT, but there's other like Jasper, there's other software out there. Using AI for content writing, they had to do it with their own risk, right? They knew Google said no, and it was considered a black hat, and you're like, maybe you could get away with it if you're just clever about it. Maybe don't do it on like a big brand, but maybe if you have lots of domains and you're like a savvy SEO, you can get away with doing auto-generated content. And then Google totally went backwards and they said, you know what, actually it's totally fine. And they even have a specific article there in their FAQ that now says that it's fine, as long as it is authoritative, it gives value, and also, know it's original. Right, so maybe you can't just like ask it and just paste, and if it's not original and other people use it, it won't give much value. But for all intents and purposes, Google says you could use AI to write content, to help you with content, and that's why now it's it's such an exciting field to now be able to use this. And this, by the way, this was sort of recent. I think it was like a day or two ago, where literally they took out the words helpful content written by people, and now they just literally got rid of the words by people. Okay, cool. When it comes to just best uses of it, a lot of times people go there and they just keep it simple, like write me a blog post, right? They don't do like any research on it, and then they go, hey, I use ChatGPT for my content, and really, this stuff, my blog didn't get much more traffic. And I'm like, well, what did you write about? Did you research the keywords? Did you do this? Did you do that? Like, no, we just use ChatGPT, right? So the best use is, you take it step by step. And really, I would first do keyword research, and ChatGPT, doesn't know keyword volume, right? It doesn't have latest data, so it's best to use a third-party software like SEMrush or Ahrefs. Do your keyword research. This is the volume these keywords make. This is how competitive they are. I think I can rank for these keywords. And then you go to ChatGPT and you can say, hey, here's my keyword. I want to write a blog post on it. And then you can say, hey, can you give me some, topics to suggest? And then from those topics, from those titles, then you pick one and you say, hey, let's use this one. Can you please write the headings? Can you please write the outline? And really, again, have that two-way conversation. It's not just spin me something out and use it. That's not going to be a way to rank with ChatGPT, especially if, when this first came out, I was like thinking like, man, I don't even have to use ChatGPT, like the interface. I'm going to use AI, and like, here's my 10,000 articles, and I'm just going to get them back, and they're going to be amazing. And I was wrong. The articles actually weren't good, and you really do need that back and forth, and they even get repetitive. If you don't put in things like personas, if you don't put in things like writing styles, if you don't go back and forth, things that ChatGPT comes out, it gets repetitive. And I came to the point that I recognize ChatGPT content now too, except when you kind of do these extra steps and it actually becomes original. Okay, so here are some tips about how to make it original, how to give it a little twist. how to make sure that what ChatGPT didn't spit out for you with your prompt isn't the same one that everyone else used, right? You can have it write in styles, academic style, fantasy style. I want an advertising style. I want clear and concise. There's also authors. Hemingway is the one I like to use a lot. Hemingway wrote clear and concise. It's short. It's really good for website copy, right? But again, it depends on your purpose, right? You could also give it an audience. Again, give it a persona, and you can have it write a persona. Hey, write me a persona that's interested in this. It writes your persona. You could edit it and spit it right back to it. Hey, this is my persona. Write to this person. You can. I don't have it up here, but you can even do brands. You can even say write like Apple, right? It's going to write you like Apple. You give it genders, age range, economic status. My person's really good. My audience really knows this topic. I'm selling crypto, and my audience are just like really crypto masters. So I want someone, write this for someone who already knows crypto, or write this for crypto beginners. My audience doesn't really know much about crypto. Write this really lower level, right? And you could tell ChatGPT that, and not only will it actually get your audience correct, but also make sure that your content is more original than others may be using that same thing. Don't take ChatGPT's first reply. I got really good with this. It was actually funny. There was a Reddit post about Smart Sites, my agency, right? And people are talking about experiences with it. And there was one experience, people are like, hey Mike, this person actually said good things about Smart Sites, but this is not a client, this person? And I read it right away, I'm like, this is ChatGPT. I know it's ChatGPT. There's no specifics, it's very generic. And I literally went to ChatGPT, asked the same question, I said, hey, write Smart Sites a review. And it wasn't word for word, but it was so similar. Right away, I could tell, listen, this is ChatGPT. And by the way, they didn't use writing styles, they didn't use personas, they didn't use that extra thing, they used the first reply, and you could really tell. With emails too, by the way, sometimes I get emails, I'm like, this is a ChatGPT reply, I'm not even going to read it, But if you're clever about it, right, it's just as good as original. And that's why, by the way, I think Google changed their stance. Right after a while, Google said, you know what, you can use the technology, it is original, there's no difference between a human writing it, we can't even tell, so it was forced to change its stance on it. So, what are the steps I would take? ChatGPT could be your first draft, but please treat it as a first draft. Read it, ask it to alter it, give it personas, give it a lot of instructions. Read it, definitely needs, at least right now, maybe next year won't, but it really needs a human fact check, right? Make sure all the facts are correct. Right, edit it, make it a little different, and feed it right back, and have ChatGPT rewrite this, re-edit it, just write it a little bit differently. And through that process, you're going to get something that, is indistinguishable to, a real professional writer writing it. Yeah, here's another one I mentioned before. When it comes to niche things that just ChatGPT doesn't know a lot about, it ends up writing really generic stuff, right? So if you're writing a lot of, people have used it a lot for reviews. I know this because when I've researched companies, I could tell right away that this is ChatGPT stuff. I'm not actually going to take this seriously, right? So, and especially because ChatGPT doesn't know specific products, right? So it's going to end up writing something very, very generic. It's not good. But by the way, it's really good at replying to reviews. That's somewhere where you don't care about whether it's unique or not, right? You just have to be professional and recognize your mistake. So again, if you're a brand that has reviews and you have to respond to reviews, ChatGPT use it, writing reviews, do not. Okay. All right, so if you're using ChatGPT, actually show of hands. Who's using ChatGPT, hasn't used plugins, hasn't used advanced data analytics, just use a chat prompt? Raise your hand. Just use it in chat. Okay. So to really get the most out of ChatGPT, I'm not going to talk to you today about plugins. It'll take a little bit longer. There's so many good plugins out there. But one is, this is like a plugin, but it's like a built-in one. It's called Advanced Data Analysis. It's called a code interpreter, but it's not just for code, so they renamed it. I think it's a good name, Advanced Data Analysis. And that enables a few things. And one it enables, you now get this extra thing right here, a little plus sign, and you could actually give it files. Right? So for example, you could give an Excel spreadsheet, right, a CSV with actual data, right? And it could be anything. It could be click-through rates. It could be, add headline and here's a click-through rate, right? And all of a sudden, if you're doing, again, it's not about pay-per-click, but if, say you're doing pay-per-click and you want to write, another ad copy, you want ChatGPT to write ad copy for you. If you just tell ChatGPT to write ad copy for you, it's going to be pretty bad ad copy. Probably one that professional writes can be better, and you can test it, and chances are ChatGPT didn't do a good job. It doesn't have the analysis, it doesn't have the data. But all of a sudden you feed it into, here's all my ad copy, here's the click-through rate, here's the conversion rates. You give it to it, you say, hey, can you analyze this data, and from this data suggest some more different ad copy, some more alternatives that the A/B test is actually going to do a really good job with it. And in this use case, I gave it, we had a list of, we have lots of reviews for smart sites, so I gave it a list of reviews. And for SEO purposes, I wanted that my SEO page has SEO reviews, my pay-per-click page has pay-per-click reviews, and I really, featured the best reviews smart sites has, right? And to have someone do this is actually really tough because we have like 1,000 reviews, right? So for a human to actually analyze 1,000 reviews, read them, and pick out the best ones, it's going to take them a long time. Even for a marketing intern, it's going to probably take several days. I don't know if they're going to do such a great job, right? I put it in the CSV. And by the way, before this, if you didn't use the functionality, before what I would do is if you paste too many things at a time, it's going to tell you, hey, I can't read so many things. Stop pasting so many things. So you have to do it in chunks. Like paste, 10 reviews and say, hey, I have 10 reviews. Can you confirm you got the 10 reviews? And say confirm. I'll paste another 10 and another 10, and there's this silly exercise that I have to do until I finally get all my reviews. And that's a pretty cool trick too. That if you're pasting something that's too long, you can actually paste a section of it. Have it, hey, I'm going to paste you more, please confirm you got this. It's going to say confirm, and you can give it more and more. But with this, it doesn't have that, or at least I never reached the point that says, hey, that's too much data. I've never tried maybe tens of thousands of rows, but actually there might be a limit, I'm not sure. So here, it took this, right, and it was so good about it too. To me, this like ChatGPT 5, what it did was so much better than my experience with it before. Because it says, I've received it, and it even says, now we're going to do sentiment analysis. And it does sentiment analysis and spits out, here are the best 5 reviews, right? And again, I saved this window for later, right? I saved the chat, I put it in a handy spreadsheet. I could come back to it and say, hey, now we're writing a blog post for, SEO about lawyers. Can you pick out some reviews from lawyers? Or can you pick out some reviews about where they say specifically that we, give them a good return on investment? Right, or we really increase their lead generation or their e-commerce sales because this is a blog post about e-commerce sales, and keep that window, and it does that for you. So, okay, one thing that ChatGPT doesn't do right now, right, it doesn't access the internet, right? So you can't tell it, hey, access this website and come back to me with this, right? But what's really good is it's really good with coding. Right, so if you use a third party, if you use ChatGPT plus this third party, all of a sudden you can do so much more, right? You look at a website and you're like, I want all the images on this website, or I want all the alt text of this website to analyze all text. If your website's a competitor's website, you find the competitor site map and you go, hey, I want to go through all of these and I want you to tell me all the external links, from these competitor pages. Again, ChatGPT can't do it by itself, but you go to ChatGPT and you go, hey, write me a script. Right, maybe Google Apps Script, for example, that goes to each page and does A, B, and C. I have the Google Suite, I love the Google Suite, but there's other products out there just as well. But Google Suite has this, and you don't have to pay Google for it. Google Apps Script is free, just like Gmail, right? It doesn't have like unlimited, so again, we have the Google Suite, so I don't know the limits to the free, so maybe like if you ask it to like crawl 10,000 pages, it'll say, hey, too much processing, you have to pay Google now. But unless you're doing things like in really, really big mass quantities, again, you could go to Google App Script, just like a few buttons, App Script, and even if you're scared of code, you're not a coder, you can still do this. It's really a few clicks away. It's extensions, App Script, you paste it, and you press run. And for example, you can have it say, hey, I'm going to have the URLs in column A, column B, spit this out for me. And it does that, it's so seamless. And again, you don't need a developer anymore, you don't need to know how to code yourself. ChatGPT could help you with this. So whatever you think of, again, you need to access the web, etc. ChatGPT can't do it. It can help you do it through something like Google Apps Scripts. All right, other things it can do, for example, page speed optimization with ChatGPT. So it actually can't do complex things if you give it too many complex things. So for example, one of the things with SEO is you want your website to be fast. And there's so many things to a fast website, right? Say you have WordPress, there's WordPress plugins, right? So it could be an inefficient plugin, or you're tracking too many things. You have too many things in your Google Tag Manager. Maybe you have like 3 analytics codes out there. Some old one, a new one, someone that you forgot who put it in, right? ChatGPT can't help you with that. right? It can help you with little pieces, you're writing this code and you have this slider and this slider's inefficient. And you go, hey, here's my code, it's a little inefficient, can you make it more efficient? Or it's actually good at writing documentation for code too. You're like, I don't understand this code, write me documentation, and it writes you documentation, you can help understand it. But certain things you can't do, at least not right now, right? And that's where you need a developer. So the developer should use ChatGPT for certain parts that it could, but all in itself, it can't do these things. Also not so great with link building. Another very critical part of SEO, right, that it doesn't really do too much with. So you could go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, what are some links I could build? This is my website, this is my niche, and it does okay, very basic stuff, right? But if you have competitor terms, it's not going to do much, with it. So really, you still need tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs. So link building, not so efficient. And I've read studies and people say, hey, we use ChatGPT to personalize every single email in my link building outreach campaign, and I read these and I'm like, you're better off just making one really good template and only using it. These websites aren't like sharing, let me see your email, is it different, or did they send you the same email, right? So again, people use ChatGPT for it, I wouldn't recommend it. Other tools, SEMrush, Ahrefs. I put my favorite tool, by the way, Ahrefs LinkedIn Intersect. If you have a competitive keyword, you put in all the guys that are ranking for the competitive keyword. You put in your website there, and it's going to tell you all the links that your competitors have, or the guys rank on top, and you don't have. Again, not a ChatGPT thing, but ChatGPT can't do everything. Okay, so ChatGPT is not the only game in town. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some others. Cool. Image generation is one of them, right? AI image generation. Here I use DALL-E. Midjourney creates even better images. So, and there's some other ones out there. I use Midjourney, I use DALL-E, and a few others. But I've noticed it depends on the prompt you give it. Again, a lot of people have given up because they give it like a prompt and come back with something ugly like this. Right, so it said, make me a social media post for Valentine's Day for smart sites or a digital marketing agency, and what the heck did you give me, right? I can't use this, right? But if you come back and you actually give it, not just your purpose, but you actually have to give it creative direction, and I say, hey, for Valentine's Day, right, I want a light bulb. Our logo is like a light bulb and a brain. So I said, hey, give me a light bulb and a brain, shape of a heart, and hey, this is stuff I could actually use. What other people have done doesn't work too great with me, but they've actually went to ChatGPT and they said, hey, write me a prompt for Midjourney or for DALL-E, yada yada, and it writes you the prompt, and you copy and paste that prompt into Midjourney or DALL-E. I don't know, it doesn't work too great with me, but you can try it. I know it's worked well with others, but again, you really have to give it the, hey, this is what I actually want, not just this is the purpose. Okay, ChatGPT only has facts up to 2021. For now, again, I'm thinking, for next year, it's not going to be the case anymore. But as of right now, it's only up to 2021. So for anything new, Bard by Google is really good, right? So I asked ChatGPT, who's the current president or prime minister of the UK. It says, Alexander Boris. That fact is old, right? But you ask Bard, Bard knows, right? Bard is by Google. It's free, right? Bard.google.com. You can use it. I was writing a blog post for Smart Sites on something like top 25 VPNs. And again, just to start the research, I went to ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, what are the top 25, make me a list and tell me some things about them, some pros and cons. And I asked ChatGPT to do that. And it came back with it, but then half the sites were gone already. That's not too useful. So I spent more time filtering out the crap than really saving time for. I asked Bard the same thing. Bard actually did a good job with it. So anything new, ask Bard. And by the way, you could feed both of them, back and forth also. ChatGPT does something, ask Bard to rewrite it. Bard rewrites it, go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, make this funny, make this silly, make this more concise, make this like advertising copy, make this more to my persona, right? And that actually works really well back and forth. Use both things. Okay. Depending on your niche, depending what you're writing for, if it violates ChatGPT policy, you're going to get this friendly message that says, hey, we think it violates policy, and it doesn't answer you. Well, in fact, actually, it starts answering you, and if you catch it right in time, you could actually probably get an answer, but then it stops and it sends you this message right here. Okay, thanks, right? But there's also uncensored generative AI, right? This one right, there's a few though, you can Google it, this one's Llama 2. Right, and it's like instructions on how you could even run it locally. So if you're like, more like scared about privacy, hey, I don't want, any big company out there to know everything I've told it. right? You could download this, run it off your own computer, your own servers, right? And actually it's uncensored, so now all of a sudden you could have it write any ad copy you want. Again, if you're in a niche that ChatGPT it doesn't write for, you can still use AI copy for it. And in some ways, it's actually going to be better because guess what? ChatGPT so many people are using, not too many people are using this, right? So all of a sudden, it's going to be much less competitive for you. Everyone's still using manual writers for this, and very few people are using it to actually, write out copy for these niches. So this is, some good arbitrage here until this becomes a lot more mainstream, like ChatGPT. Cool. So AI right now, it's like the internet boom in 1995, right? So it's not all the way to peak right now, right? But there's so many AI tools out there, and some are really, really good, and some are powerful, and they make tens of millions of dollars, right? They have so much funding, and a lot of them, kind of suck. They're not going to last. There's going to be a time that all of a sudden, just like the dot-com, bubble, where a lot of these come out, and then you're going to have like, it pop, and only a few are going to actually stay. They're actually producing value, and a lot aren't. And trust me, I've used so many that it's not even worth using. One of my team members was really big on, hey, we need to use these AI tools to help us with meetings, and they do note taking, and it was like this pretty outrageous price. It costs us like tens of thousands of dollars per year to use this like virtual note taker AI. I don't want to say the actual tool, but anyway, we used it, and then I'm like, it didn't do anything. It literally, took the transcript, which Google gives you anyway. I use we love the Google Suite, so we use Google Meet. Google Meet already gives me the transcript, and what it does, it takes the transcript, it goes to ChatGPT, and it says, summarize these, and are there any action steps from this? And then it just feeds it back to you. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to pay tens of thousands of dollars for this, and this company gets like tens of millions of dollars in funding. I'm like, it's not even like its own, AI, just using ChatGPT for it. So again, there's so many out there, so many really good, some are not so good. So keep that in mind when you're looking into this, especially if you're at DDP, if you're enterprise, investing a lot of money, not even just money, but even the systems it takes to actually incorporate this, and then to later find out that it doesn't really do much, right? All right, cool. So should you implement or resist artificial intelligence? So my little picture here is the way I see it is kind of like there's lots of farmers, right? Before tractors, farmers had to do things manually, right? They plant their seeds, and they have oxen, right, and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden tractors come out, right? And farmers who resisted tractors, they're at a disadvantage, right? And it's not that a lot of people are like, oh, AI is going to replace writers, going to replace developers. No, just like Google did, right? Just like all these other tools didn't actually replace, just like tractors didn't replace farmers, right? Tractors replace farmers that weren't using tractors. Yeah, right. Because all of a sudden, the people that were using tractors, you have better quality, more consistent product. You do it faster. You go to market faster. You can sell your goods for cheaper. Right. All these advantages that the people who resisted, maybe they didn't do so good, but that people who used it did much better. So again, across the board, it's not about replacing writers. You still need to go back and forth. You still need that human component. That's really where it works best. If you're not using that, it really, to maximize it, it really has to be humans using it, and again, across the board, not just a few people in an organization. Cool, and that's all for my presentation. So I'm going to write a blog post on this, right? And smart sites, we have high authority, right? We have a high traffic website. I'm going to write a blog post on it. I'm going to mention everyone here to say, hey, here's the people. Thank you for attending. And I'm going to link to your websites. If it's a website I can link to, I'll link to your social media, like your Instagram, like your LinkedIn. So if you want me to mention you, please message me on LinkedIn. If you don't have LinkedIn, message me in the Hova app. I'm going to take everyone who messaged me, and you're going to be in the blog post, and also mention you on LinkedIn and everything. And that's all I got for you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Yes, please, go ahead.
Will you share your presentation somewhere?
Yes, especially if you message me, okay. Hey Mike, can you send me the presentation?
Okay.
Yeah. Questions? Yes, please, go ahead.
What are some of your top plugins that you use in ChatGPT at the moment?
To be honest, I don't use too many plugins. This big one, the one I had, Advanced Data Analytics, that's my favorite. There's Web Search one. I didn't really like it though. I think it needs to get a little bit better. Basically, it's you go to a website and it reads the website, and it's like, all right, but at that point I could just copy and paste it into ChatGPT. It doesn't do much for you. Yeah. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please, go
Don't you
ahead.
think that ChatGPT will just replace search engines completely?
Yes,
I hardly use Google anymore.
let me tell you,
Only
first,
if I need facts.
excellent plug for my brother's session, Alex, which is going to be right over there in Prague, D, but there's a shortcut, and he's literally going to have a whole presentation on it, and not to give it away, but the answer is no, but I'll tell you a few things though. So, yeah, ChatGPT, it replaces some, and just like you, I stopped. Before, when I needed help with like Excel spreadsheets, I would go to Google. It would link me to Stack Overflow. You'd have Google ads everywhere, right? And I would use Stack Overflow, and now I would go to ChatGPT for it. But when you're actually looking for a product, when you're actually looking for a service, a solution, right? Hey, I need someone to mow my lawn or something, right? I'm still going to go to Google for it. Maybe there'll be Google Voice or something, right? But I'm going to go to Google to find, the solution to my product, right? Especially when it's like a business solution, yeah. And I'll tell you one other thing, which is I think also very exciting. ChatGPT will also have its own ChatGPT optimization, right? Because I go to Google and I say, what are the top 5 SEO companies, right? And like, where did it get that information from, right? Like, it never used me. Why does it think I'm top 5, right? It didn't actually use all 5 and correctly compare all of them. And what it did is it read other websites, very similar to what Google does, right? It read other websites, right? Interpret the best it can and spit it back out. So all the same optimization that you would do for Google will also work for ChatGPT, and there's going to be some nuances and there's going to be a whole science to it. So more things are going to come out to say, hey, this helps you optimize for the ChatGPT answer. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
As an agency owner, considering the fact that most of the agencies can now use ChatGPT, how do you see it? Will it make the game be even more competitive? It's a problem for you as an agency, that everyone can use it?
Yeah, thank you. I go back, thank you so much for the question, right? Is that everyone's using ChatGPT, everything just got a lot more competitive, right? And the days are better or worse, right? So first I'll go back to my tractor, metaphor, right? All of a sudden, all these farmers have tractors, it's helping the farmer, right? Yes, sure, now everyone's using tractors and the things are a little cheaper, but at the end of the day, right, you're making more product, right, for cheaper. Right, I'll tell you a few things. One, ironically, I thought the biggest optimization actually would be in the content, right? I thought my content would be so much cheaper. I'm going to fire most of my writers and just use ChatGPT. But actually, with content, it was almost the opposite was true. My content with ChatGPT actually didn't take any much less time, right? But the quality got a lot better. One of the biggest reasons for cancellation for SEO, not just my agency, but for others too, and we analyzed all this. Hey, we have 1,000 clients, so clients cancel, or hey, why did they cancel? And we look into it. And content was always an issue, right? Like, a lot of clients, something like a third of the clients, cancel because of content. And right now, it's way less than 10% this year, right? So it didn't get, more optimized, but the quality got a lot better. Clients are much happier with it. And then things like developers, it helped. Most of the efficiencies we've seen with ChatGPT isn't even with the content with our development team. All of a sudden my development team found solutions so much faster, right? So my developers, we didn't let any off, but we grew 30%, kept our developers were able to do, meet that demand without having to hire more developers, where every other year I would actually have to increase my development team, right? So yeah, it's also true that, hey, everyone's going to use it, so you have to up your game, but at the end of the day, it's definitely going to help the business, help agency owners, and so many other businesses as well. That's a great question, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say you've got a well-working blog with lots of traffic. If you would change your content strategy and just put it full with ChatGPT content, would you destroy the traffic, yes or no? Or what would you exactly do to destroy it? Like just put it full of AI content. What would happen in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It might be good, it might be bad, right? So maybe be careful, right? If you had just one brand, right? Here's my main website, and it's the one website for the whole brand and for the whole company, it's lots of employees. It's risky, right? Especially if you're not too original and other people have that same content and users actually don't like that content. Yeah, it's going to hurt you, right? You maybe switch from a writer who actually knows your audience, right? And Google's ranking this content well because they write that content, and all of a sudden you're going to say, hey, I'm going to replace all this content that I know users like with something that I'm not sure if users are going to like. Yeah, I mean, there's a big risk. I wouldn't risk it, right?
So still better experiment like with new sites.
Yeah, experiment with new sites, and again, it's like I wouldn't do like this like mass approach, right? And I would even like, I don't know, Like, one good analysis to do, right, is to maybe, review your site, review your blog, and find where you're like on the second page. Right, hey, I didn't crack the first page for these keywords, right, I'm somewhere on the second page, right? And that's somewhere where you're like, on the second page, barely anyone clicks, right? So like your risk to making this worse is not so high, because all of a sudden you made the content worse, it goes from the second page to the fifth page, actually not a big deal, no one's clicking second or fifth page, right? But hey, maybe you'll actually make it to the first page. So I would feed all that content and say, hey, ChatGPT, make this content better, right? And then again, maybe give it by persona, make it, more interesting, whatever it is, right? And that would be an experiment that's worthwhile, that's low risk, high reward, versus taking something that works with a writing team that works and saying, hey, hopefully my audience likes ChatGPT just as well. Yeah, maybe it will, maybe it won't. That's a great question. Other questions,
I
please.
just want to share, in case it helps someone, I'm not like a SEO expert, I've been learning about it in the last months. What I've been building is like a team of writers, and I build like a hybrid system. So I build like an automatic blog generating articles with ChatGPT, but I don't publish them directly. There's like a team that review every article for like 10, 15 minutes, and they maybe make it more customized, they correct errors, that makes it look original, while also taking advantage of saving money and increasing its speed.
Yeah, probably that hybrid approach, again, I agree, and especially you feed information by persona, here's the audience, you do research of, hey, the people who are ranking, these are the topics that they're talking about, here's the things that they have in their blog posts, and you do that research. But, ChatGPT doesn't have that research, right? And other tools, by the way, do, and you can even go, yourself and click the top post and say, hey, here's what they're talking about, and you tell ChatGPT, hey, make sure you mention these things, and everyone's talking about this. But definitely I think a hybrid approach, human, ChatGPT, and maybe a third-party tool like keyword research, actually going through what's ranking and spinning back in, that's going to give you the best results, definitely. Thank you. Good input. Please go ahead.
And also, if you have an article that's ranking or on page 2, you can also feed the whole article with ChatGPT and ask it to break it up. So you can make 5 posts surrounding it, and it already has your writing style and everything. So it's
Yes.
you need to think out of the box a little bit.
Yes, definitely. And very similar to feeding instructions and personas and stuff, very good, exactly what you said. You tell it, hey, here's the style. This is ranking well already, or hey, this is the style of writing, write in this style, rewrite some of these things, write me something that I could reference back to that article. It does really well with those instructions, definitely. Thank you. Any other questions, please?
Do you think it makes sense, for example, let's say you're building something like a PDN or something similar to this, and you're like creating other blogs which are not intended to have like quality content, just like content for ranking posts from your money site. I think then it makes sense to not consider that much the quality of the content and just like make random posts and just put a link to the site you want to run, or
Probably not worthwhile strategies. So what he references PBN, Public Blog Network. So it's people use these, they make kind of these like farms of websites and these old blogs, and really the sole purpose of these is just Google, right? And then Google made all these updates to literally, make sure to rank those, and it would hurt you more than it'll help you. I think at the end of the day, you still need to think about it, the user, you still need, right, there's an acronym E, you still need to have authoritative content, right? If you're just plainly using ChatGPT, Google, we'll see it, and it's not authoritative, they don't know who writes it, there's no real examples for it, etc. It's not going to, be worthwhile. Maybe it'll be short-lived, the success, but it's probably not a strategy I personally would look into. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.